The old man was sipping tea, as he always did at this time of the day. It was their usual ritual, their time. But today was going to be quite different. The student knew that he had a new purpose in life, and sadly, his mentor was an obstacle to all of that. As he approached from behind, the old man was still drinking from that little cup, unaware of what was waiting for him. There was a very brief moment of doubt and then action. A blade of full energy pierced the chest of the former master. "Why?" A whimper came out of the elder's mouth next before his body fell limp and collapsed to the ground. His student wasn't wasting any time, as he picked up the magical earrings that his former master was wearing. With them, he was able to use the artifact known as the Time Ring. He could finally realize his vision of a beautiful and magnificent world with them. Gathering those planet-sized Dragon Balls wasn't easy, even for an entity of his magnitude, but he finally managed to do it. Such a frivolous tool, he thought, capable of changing the very nature of the universe itself. As he uttered the activation phrase, the dragon awoke. The gargantuan serpent, whose movements could reshape galaxies on a whim and extinguish stars and exterminate entire civilizations, looked at him, awaiting the wish. "Dragon," he said, "I want to exchange the bodies with the one called Son Goku. I wish to understand his might and power and make them my own." There was a pause, and a second that could as well last for a millennia. But in this very moment, Zamasu could swear that the ancient serpent smiled. He just felt it in his very soul. As he was readying himself for the change, the Kai wasn't aware that he had failed to predict one important thing. The phrasing meant everything. Super Shenron, the first of the eternal dragons to have ever graced this reality, was greatly amused by this. And before Zamasu realized that something was wrong, it was too late to back out. He was being pulled somewhere. Time, once again, was a flat circle. When he came to, he was laying on his back in a forested area. He noticed a blue sky and pieces of lumber scattered about him. He must have dropped them. As he stood up, he noticed something rather worrying. He shouldn't be this short. In terror, he then also realized that he had a tail. What was the meaning of this? He had asked this stupid dragon to make him exchange bodies with Son Goku. He couldn't recall that idiot having a tail. He even traveled to the future to do so. What was the matter?
"Oh, Goku, my boy, are you all right?"
He heard an older voice, and someone was approaching him. So, wait, he was the Saiyan after all. Okay. Or was there somebody else called Son Goku in reality that maybe Super Shenron mixed up? No, a dragon like that couldn't make a mistake. He raised his head to see an elderly man, seemingly human, with a kindly expression on his face.
"Here, let Grandpa see."
The individual walked slowly, towering over him, and quickly looked at his head. Zamasu was paralyzed with fear, but he dared not move. It seemed that this person was examining his head and body for bruises. "I'm fine," he uttered. The voice that came out was familiar, but a little higher than he expected. It felt almost grotesque to hear his own words sound like this. It almost sounded childlike.
"I heard some noise. You must have tripped. Oh, I shouldn't have made you carry all that lumber on your own. I'm sorry, my boy."
"It is okay, Grandpa."
He used that word reluctantly, unsure about the familial relationships between the two.
"Are you sure? You seem still rather shaken. Tell you what, I'm going to take that lumber for you and make us something tasty to eat later."
Zamasu nodded slowly. He must devise a strategy to subdue this moron and revoke that damned wish and start again. He noticed that the man was watching him carefully. Was he expecting something? Had he become suspicious? He decided to wait for him to gather the pieces of wood and follow him to wait his next move. Apparently, they lived in a small hut. It was only then, when he walked into the hut and saw his face in the mirror, that he recognized the trademark hairstyle of Son Goku. He was a child, so this is how the fool started out. He had been adopted by some old human and lived in the middle of the forest, much humbler than he had expected. But he didn't want to alert the old man as to his real identity. Very quickly, the elderly individual started making some sort of dumpling, filled with meat and vegetables. He will have to eat this primitive mortal meal to try and ingratiate himself and not arouse suspicion. Maybe then that will get this fool off of his back.
Are you sure that everything's all right? You are usually so excited about dinner. The fact that you're not is, worrying.
The concern in his voice was almost touching, if it weren't so irritating. Zamasu knew that at some point he would have to silence this man for good.
No, really, Grandpa. I am completely fine.
Well, my gyoza will surely make you feel a little better. Just a moment, I need to fry them for just a little bit more.
As Zamasu was awaiting probably the absolute worst experience he would have ever encountered, he suddenly started to actually smell the food, which wasn't half bad. Maybe it had something to do with these unrefined Saiyan senses that he was now getting used to. But as soon as he was given this portion of dumplings, he actually felt hunger. And after trying them, he realized that they were delicious. Maybe it was because of this body's habits, but he really enjoyed that meal. So the old man had his uses after all. He would live. If he wasn't staring at him all the time, he would have slightly gone to like him.
There. Are you feeling any better?
Yes, Grandpa. Thank you for that delicious meal,
he said in a very formal tone that he often used with Goasu. It sounded rather weird though, spoken in Son Goku's voice though.
You didn't happen to hit your head, did you?
The old man raised an eyebrow.
No, of course not.
Zamasu felt flustered about that question.
All right, let's test it. What is my name?
There was a long pause.
Grandpa? What is the meaning of these questions? I am fine.
The old man sighed and shook his head.
Where do we live? What is the name of this place?
Another pause. Despite the meal being excellent, Zamasu started to break into a sweat. Or to be more precise, Son Goku's disgusting body started to sweat, not him.
As I thought, you have lost some of your memories. Oh, my poor boy. I must go and see a doctor. Tomorrow we pack up and go on a journey to Orange City. Someone has to see that noggin of yours.
No, I don't want to.
Zamasu tried to sound like a spoiled brat, but this wasn't the expected behavior. The old man wasn't angered or anything.
It is for your own good, Goku. We need to check it out. Don't worry. I'll help you regain your memories, I promise.
He tried to look defeated, although internally he knew that he wouldn't be seeing this old man for that long. He just had to wait that little bit longer until nightfall to slip away into the darkness. But to go where? Well, finding Dragon Balls on this planet could certainly help. He was pretty sure that Son Goku's Earth had at least a regular set to hand, so maybe it would be the thing to help him out somehow to get to the next level and try and find somebody who could actually help him. He spent the rest of the day with this grandpa looking over him. He wasn't protesting or anything. After all, if he did, the old man would be even more insufferable. And his being quiet resulted in yet another meal, so he wasn't complaining. After it was already dark, the old man lay in his bed, expecting the boy to position himself on top of his stomach. It was weird and uncomfortable, but Zamasu was tired of discussing this one and decided to lay down until the geezer fell asleep. The Kai also noticed the thick drapes covering the hut's windows and pondered their purpose. What were they for? It's not like somebody would come to this middle of nowhere, so why the privacy? He could hear the breath of the old man for the next hour or so, trying to be alert and caring, if his adopted grandson felt funny, in a way that was almost sweet for a mortal, and it took Zamasu's desire to kill the man in his sleep away from him. He will travel back to the future instead, which should make this one live up to the end of his days in a natural way. After all, as a grandiose deity, he wasn't without his mercy. Finally, when he heard the first snore, he decided to get up. Grandpa moved through his sleep, but he didn't wake up. Using those small feet of his at the end of those disgustingly chubby legs, Zamasu decided to sneak out there and then. He slowly opened the door and walked into the woods. There were no reasons for him to be afraid. He had the body of Earth's strongest mortal after all. Nothing could stand in his way. And, after a moment, he looked through the treetops. There was some light. Good. He wasn't going in blind. Ah, yes, the Earth's moon was full today. Excellent. But why was it attracting his sight tonight? Why was this so alluring? He tried to look away, but he simply couldn't. His every muscle seemed to be paralyzed. And then something within him exploded. He experienced a sudden expansion of his body, causing his consciousness to recede. He wrestled with it to see his arms becoming muscular and hairy as he grew taller and taller. He roared from anger and pain, but it wasn't a childlike voice anymore, no. It was the sound of a beast. Grandpa left his hut, terrified of the sight.
Oh no! Goku! I told you not to come out after dark! Can you hear me?
Run, stupid old man!
Zamasu roared, feeling that control was slipping away from his mind. Very quickly, he started to see red, and after that, he remembered nothing.
He woke up inside the hut in his bed. He was all bandaged, and Grandpa was there with his arm in a provisional sling.
He had some scars and signs of battle.
How are you feeling?
He smiled slightly, not a trace of malice in his voice.
What was that? My head.
Zamasu felt his body aching and slightly weak, but other than that, he was undamaged. The old man sighed.
I guess it's time that I should tell you this. After all, you are a big boy now. You know, Goku, 12 years ago, I found you in a peculiar crater. I wish I was joking, but it's the truth.
Zamasu tried to pretend to be shocked, so he never told him. The Saiyan was too skilled to even question his heritage, given his tail and other characteristics.
I know it might sound weird. I wasn't one to believe such things, but I think you came to me from the stars, my boy. This happened before. Of course, it occurred when you were very little, so I managed to overpower you and nurse you back to health.
What do you mean by this?
Zamasu wasn't too awfully familiar with Saiyan biology, and it seemed that the only thing this man had were guesses and past experience.
During a full moon night, you change your shape. You transform into something else. But do not worry. I still know that deep down, my Goku is still inside of it. After all, I managed to snap you out of it.
Zamasu then said nothing. He realized that this grandpa might have been surprised and that his adopted pupil had no more questions, but he might have assumed that this was simply because of shock. Yeah, shock.
No matter what happens, Goku, I will always love you as my own flesh and blood. Remember that.
He ruffled his hair. The Kai said nothing. His mind returned to the image of the savagery of the barbarian race, of the disgusting, violent tendencies. And yet, here on this planet, there was this old man in this weird little hut, so willing to risk his life for a Saiyan, capable of transforming into a savage monster. Well, it was a good thing that he ended up here after all. The Zero Mortal plan wasn't finalized after all. Maybe the reason Son Goku was so strong was because of this one special individual. Son Goku was so strong. Yes, it must have been to do with this guy. He was good, and his intentions were so clear that Zamasu could tell for sure. But how many mortals like him were there? It's not like the vast majority were like that, disgusting little things. Yet, He recognized the value of sparing this little humble grandpa in his tiny house. This would make his utopia slightly less empty. Yes, he could make revisions to his plan, which now sounded more ambitious. Cleanse the impure mortals and leave only the few, the good ones. After all, someone would have to be left to admire his work. What would be the point if no one was there to see how brilliant he was?
Thank you, Grandpa,
he said, giving the old man a weak smile.
See, that's my boy, you finally smiled, the elder chuckled. I'll let you rest. You'll help me with some work in the morning. Sadly, my arm is not working right now. However, we will overcome it. We always do. You and me.
And then he went outside. This time, the drapes were open, and only now had Zamasu realized that there was a slight hole in the roof, and some trees had been displaced. The bench outside the house had been snapped in two. He planned to escape one more time, once he felt better. But something was off. His eye stopped at the arm in the crook. He had a passing thought of the old man having to deal with all of this destruction on his own. Zamasu had expertise in assisting the elderly. Besides, this arm won't be healing for that long, right? And he needs to check out the capabilities of his body. If this man was able to stop him in that monster form, he must be quite formidable, right? It won't hurt to stay there just for a few more days and make sure that his arm and house will be okay. This was just repaying an unexpected debt. Yes, that's what it was. After all, what kind of god would he be if he didn't recognize decency, even amongst mortals? And this one was a rare sort. So, yes, staying here for just a few days will not hinder his plans. He had a lot of time to make his vision a reality. There was no rush. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.